you've got to be creating an environment that people want to be in. You've got to be creating an environment where there's respect for individuals, whatever their background, even if they are not from the sort of majority group in that organization.
How does empathy and compassion lead to better workplace productivity and profitability?
Well, there's where do I begin? There are so many studies that are coming out at the moment and have been out in the past that talk about the link between kindness, compassion, empathy, and people doing well in the workplace. So, for example, Gallup a few years ago put out some data that shows that when people's managers care about them, they're more likely to share information with their colleagues, they're more likely to be more creative, and they're more likely to be supportive of their colleagues as well. So there's been a study from Catalyst that came out just a few weeks ago, I think, and they found that if your boss is empathetic, then you are less likely to experience burnout. And then even we're talking about this great resignation at the moment, and companies are worried about attrition. But if you have an empathetic manager, you're more likely to stay on in your job. So the intent to stay increases. So there are so many bits of data and stories out there that support the fact that managers need to be more empathetic and compassionate.
What are some of the steps business leaders can take to eliminate bias?
Bias is the thing about bias, it's often hidden, right? So we grow up with biases because of the way that we are conditioned. And I still, unfortunately, meet people who say things like, oh, I'm not biased, or I don't believe in bias. And there was quite a high profile situation at the beginning of this year where a very senior leader was caught on record saying, I think bias is, I won't use his language, but he just really sort of trashed bias. And then the next day he resigned. He had to resign because there was so much upset from his staff. So it's important to realize that obviously bias is a thing, and there are many steps that we can take to reduce it. But in particular, the first thing you need to do is acknowledge it. The second thing is find a way to measure it if you possibly can. And so you need to be starting to track, for example, individuals' progress through the organization. You need to be tracking the diversity of the hires that you bring in. And then also not just how diverse is your workforce, but then how are those people actually moving through the organization? Are there certain groups that are sort of stuck at the bottom while others continue to progress? Or is it fair for everybody, so everybody has a chance to succeed? Also things like if you want to reduce bias, make sure that you don't put too much time pressure on people to make a decision, because obviously if you're under time pressure, then your brain just falls back to those easy patterns that it's used to, and then that's where bias takes place. So anything to do with time pressure, having to make sort of quick decisions or being under a pressure of any kind can increase bias. So all of those sorts of things, as well as the tracking and the measurements, can help.
Why do you believe inclusion is so important in the workplace today?
Gosh, where do I begin on that one? Inclusion is just obviously it's incredibly important. And let's just take one angle, which is a lot of companies now are looking at this business case for diversity, and they're looking at these studies that are saying that diverse teams tend to do better in sales. They come up with better strategies and solutions because of the rigor. Because when you have a diverse groupthink where people just, oh yeah, they all think the same as me, let's just kick back and come up with something easy, that doesn't work anymore, because you've got that rigor where you've got different people with different opinions, all challenging, making sure that whatever decisions you take are actually the right ones. So we understand the benefits of diversity, but what tends to happen is organizations will hire and then they'll try and bring in sort of more diversity, but then people don't stay. And that's where the inclusion part is so important, because you've got to be creating an environment that people want to be in. You've got to be creating an environment where there's respect for individuals, whatever their background, even if they are not from the sort of majority group in that organization. And I think what tends to happen is diverse individuals are brought in, but the support network isn't there for them. And so what ends up happening is either they they check out sort of mentally and they just don't feel engaged, or they end up leaving after a sort of shortish period. And yeah, I think that is the reason why we need to just fix that inclusion piece with compassion, with empathy, with metrics, and understanding that certain groups might be held not allowed to progress. We could talk for hours about this, but that's my initial answer on this one.
How do you believe employees and business leaders should respond to failure?
Failure is growth, isn't it? Really, it's an opportunity to reflect. It's an opportunity to try something new. And I think as we move towards a different kind of leadership, where it's not so much about top-down command and control, do it my way, but a leadership which is more open, a leadership which is more sort of coaching style. I think as we progress to those kinds of organizations, they're much more tolerant of what we used to call failure, but now is really about a growth mindset. It's about having the agility, also the speed to assess, okay, this didn't work. That's okay, nothing's wrong here. Let's try a different path. Let's try something else. So I think failure is kind of a term of the past, I think. Failure is the lack of learning. It's the inability to learn from mistakes. And I think growth is about looking at what didn't work and then moving off in a different direction that hopefully will work.